I received an email from a rabbi to a group of rabbis a couple of months back. In it, my beautiful, successful, amazing colleague asked, "Am I the only one who ever wonders, is this all there is? Is this it?" She went on to describe how she worked so hard to get where she is in life, how now she's doing what she always dreamed of doing, has the family she always dreamed of having. And yet, even though she's arrived, she finds herself wondering, is this it? I share this with you because I believe her question resonates with a broader audience than this small group of rabbis. In fact, I believe we have a legacy of asking this question. Just look at the history of our people. Remember, we were slaves in Egypt for hundreds of years, back-breaking labor, our children literally thrown into the Nile River. And then finally, after a year of miracles, the sea splitting for us, we find ourselves free. Finally, we're able to do whatever we want with our days, and what do? We grumble. Isn't that the truth? We think something will give us happiness. And when we get it, we may have a moment where we sing Micha Mocha Bailim Adonai and give thanks. But a few weeks or a few months later, we find ourselves emotionally back where we were only a few months prior. It's almost as if we get what we want, but then we quickly return to languishing. Now, I love my job. I love you, my congregants. I love that I have a job that bears meaning. I love my family, my friends, my husband. But I also find myself wondering, is this it? And at times, I feel this calling, this longing, this untapped something that I can't name. Sometimes, despite having such a privileged existence, I struggle to be happy. But I know I'm not alone. The English word happiness is related to all the words happenstance, hapless, haphazard, which implies that happiness is tied, like those other words, to chance. If you're lucky enough to have the right kind of life or the right kind of possessions, you are more likely to be happy. In fact, if you ask a group of Americans, what do you think is most likely to make you more happy? The number one answer, money. This is the prevailing message of our society. However, study after study shows that life satisfaction in the United States has been flat for 50 years, despite the fact that our GDP has tripled. Even scarier measures of ill-being have not declined as GDP has increased. They've gotten much worse. Depression rates have risen tenfold over the past 50 years. And this is true of every wealthy nation, and importantly, not true of poor nations. Rates of anxiety have risen, social connectedness in our nation has dropped. Now, money does a lot to ease our struggle for survival and to ensure opportunities for education and access to good doctors. I know mine is here. Believe me, I welcome money into my life, but happiness is tied to more than the removal of the pain of poverty. Dr. Martin Seligman, once the head of the American Psychiatric Association, shares that he once believed what Freud had taught, that mental health was simply the removal of mental illness, that happiness would result if he was able to remove the pain. But after years of working with his patients, where they made it through whatever struggle they were dealing with, whatever abusive relationship or addiction, he would find that they would come back, glad that they'd gotten rid of that pain, but then asking him, is this it? Is this really it? This caused him to begin to think of mental health in an entirely different way. In his 2011 book, he wrote, "It's all too commonplace not to be mentally ill, but to be stuck and languishing in life. Positive mental health is a presence, the presence of positive emotion, the presence of engagement, the presence of meaning, the presence of good relationships, the presence of accomplishment. Being in a state of mental health is not merely being disorder-free, rather, it's the presence of flourishing. Flourishing. Tzadik katamar yifrach yifrach. The righteous, like the date palm, will flourish. Psalm 92 defines flourishing as continuing to grow, being productive, and feeling connected to something greater than ourselves. Seligman says that it requires presence of meaning, engagement, relationships, and accomplishment. The High Holy Days are about becoming better in the year to come. They try and push us. It's easy to become complacent in life, to say that this is just how things are. It's sometimes painful to languish, but it's the easy way. But wouldn't you rather flourish? If you would, I have 3 steps to get you on the road to flourishing. The first step in flourishing is identifying our strengths. What are your gifts? As we read in the Talmud, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, "In all creation there is nothing that lacks a divinely appointed purpose." That includes you. What are you good at? What do you like to do? What makes your heart lift, your spirits rise, gives you that glimpse of transcendence? If you can use your gifts more regularly, you can generate feelings of meaning and purpose, of accomplishment and satisfaction. Here's a trick to find out what some of your gifts are. Close your eyes. Don't worry, I'm the only one who knows if you're doing it. Think about a time when you were at your best. What were you doing? Who were you with? Think of every detail you can remember. You can open your eyes. When you go home, I invite you to do this again and write down your answer. Write a story of when you were at your best. Maybe you demonstrated follow-through, or compassion, or intellect, or creativity. Too often, we focus only on fixing our flaws and correcting our imperfections, and we forget our gifts. But as we say every morning, Asher yatzar et hadam bechokhmah, you were created in wisdom. You are wonderfully made. And as we say every evening, Ahavat olam, you are loved with an infinite love. Of course, we can all improve on our weaknesses, but don't let that work distract you from what makes you already, right now, amazing. Your second tool. Realize that emotions are not caused by external events, but by what we think about those events. And we can change what we think. As the slave-turned famous Greek philosopher Epictetus once taught, It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Dr. David Pelkowitz, psychologist and professor at Yeshiva University, teaches that in contrast to the English for happiness, the Hebrew word for happiness is simcha, whose meaning people find by putting together the words sham, there, and moach, head. Or, where's your head at? It's tied to purpose and meaning, our happiness. Maimonides, in his writing on happiness, said that you can make yourself happy on a holiday by indulging yourself, but that true happiness is tied to reaching outside yourself, inviting the unfortunate people to your table. In traditional Jewish writing, if we want to find true, enduring simcha, lasting happiness, we need to reach beyond ourselves and give our gifts to causes greater than ourselves, such as a cause, a family, a faith, a community, or just commitment to the greater good. When our gifts are exercised for a higher purpose, our lives become imbued with meaning. This can be done in great acts, like devoting your livelihood to helping others, or through small interactions. In his TED Talk, Drew Dudley tells a story of how he inadvertently used his gifts to help another person, and how knowing this gave his life meaning. He talks about how, on his last day of college, a girl he didn't recognize came up to him and said, "I remember the first time I met you. You see, I didn't want to go to college. I was scared of leaving home. And the night before orientation in the hotel room, I broke down crying, and my parents said, 'Let's just go to orientation. If you still want to go home, we'll love you no matter what. You'll come home with us.' And so I sat through orientation that day, and I felt this sense of calm because I knew this just wasn't for me. I'd made up my mind. And at that moment, you walked out of the student union wearing the most ridiculous hat I had ever seen. It was awesome. And you began giving out lollipops and talking about the fight against cystic fibrosis. Then you came up to me and you stopped and you stared, and it was creepy. And then you reached into your bucket and you pulled out a lollipop and you handed it to the young man standing next to me and said to him, "You need to give this lollipop to that beautiful woman standing next to you." I've never seen anyone so embarrassed. But he handed the lollipop to me, and you turned to my parents and said, "Look at that. First day away from home, and already she's taking candy from strangers." And everybody began to laugh. And for some reason, in that moment, I knew I shouldn't quit. I was where I was supposed to be. I was home. And while I haven't said a word to you for the past 4 years, on this day of your graduation, I need to tell you that you've been an important person in my life, and I will miss you. She then walked about 6 feet away from Dudley, turned around and said, "You should probably know this too. I'm still dating that guy 4 years later." A year and a half after graduation, Dudley received an invitation to their wedding. Now, Dudley's gifts were not those we normally think of. They included not embarrassing easily and recognizing when someone is feeling shy and afraid and being able to make them laugh. What's your gift? How can it bring joy to the world? Dudley's story not only shows us how our gifts can change others without our ever knowing it, and how every moment is imbued with meaning if we can only uncover it, but it also reflects the power of sharing our gratitude with others. Dudley did not even remember this exchange, but in hearing how he impacted this woman and her now husband, he totally transformed how he looked at himself as able to bring good into this world. And so the third tool I want to share with you is expressing gratitude. With the passing of Hurricane Irma, who threatened our lives, our property, and the stability of our community, we've collectively counted blessings lately. It's easy to count blessings when some dramatic grace from the heavens has taken place, like a Category 5 that's coming right at you, turning west and being downgraded to a Category 3. But our rabbis challenge us to do more. They challenge us to find 100 blessings every day. 100 blessings. That means that you can't take anything for granted. You have to constantly be looking for blessings. While many of our fellow Jews rattle off a list of daily blessings, getting the 100 out of the way, think about what it would be like if you had to search for them on your own. What kind of eyes would you bring to the world? While our rabbis ask us to find 100 blessings a day, I'm going to ask you to find 3. That's it. Get a journal and begin after break the fast tomorrow. Write 3 things that went well for you that day and why they went well. They don't have to be earth-shattering or a lollipop moment. They could be as simple as, my husband remembered to bring my favorite ice cream to break the fast. Or, my rabbi gave the most brilliant Kol Nidre sermon. And then I want you to write why they happened. It could be, my husband is really thoughtful sometimes, or I called my husband and told him to bring my favorite ice cream to break the fast. And I was smart enough to join a synagogue with some of the best clergy in the country. This will help to bring gratitude into our lives and help us sustain our happiness. When we recognize all that we have to be grateful for, we're happier and better able to recognize the flourishing that is already taking place. Megachurch pastor Rick Warren, famous for his book, The Purpose-Driven Life, teaches that a good pastor should give them something Sunday that they'll be using on Monday. So, if you want to change that question of, is this it, to, is this it? You have some homework. The first, find your strengths by writing about a time you were at your best. The second, use those strengths to serve something greater than yourself. If you need suggestions, we will be happy to plug your gifts in right here at Beth. And 3, count your blessings. Start with just 3 a day. What went right today? WWW. What went right? And then write down why. Let's start the new year with the knowledge that we each have gifts to give the world, that our lives have meaning and serve a cause greater than our own individuality. Let's begin the year grateful for great and small gifts in life, and let us flourish in the new year. Gemar Chatima Tova.